Greetings, my name is Chamomile and this is an exploration of the entire galaxy sector by sector. Today we're looking at Shelsha Sector and the 3rd Steel Blade Command of the Slice and the Colonies. My favorite thing about this sector is that records describe it as over 50 light years wide. So, the complete galaxy is about 120,000 light years in diameter, and the standard galactic grid is 21 by 21, so one of these squares is about 5,700 light years to each side. Now, this map doesn't have exact sector boundaries, but as we'll get into, Shelsha Sector includes both Teardrop and Shelkanwa, so, yeah. Not only is it over 50 light years across, it looks like it's probably over 500 light years across. And these intersectors are small. Out in the rims, the sectors are all like 2,000 light years across. Anyway, the Empire had an unusually light presence in Shelsha Sector, with just 2 small garrisons on the minor worlds of Minkring and Chastern IV, leaving completely alone the bigger planets like Shelkanwa and Teardrop. Ran Klinge was a mid-sized planet with hundreds of millions of inhabitants, the southern continent of which exploded into civil war about 10 years after the end of the Clone Wars. The southern continent was the more sparsely populated one, all the big cities were up north, which only makes it weirder that the Empire never did much to resolve the situation. They sent diplomats. The Empire? Diplomats! About 2 years into the conflict, but that didn't work, and at the time of the Battle of Yavin, the conflict was still ongoing. Since Shelsha Sector was buried in the colonies and thus closer to the core than the Outer Rim, the rebels didn't have a big presence there either. That led to a surprising abundance of pirates in a way you don't usually get down the road from the Arrowhead like this. The local pirate gang were called the Blood Scars, and they operated out of Gepperin for years. After the Battle of Yavin, rebel presence was exploding all over the galaxy, and they started operating in the Shelsha Sector. A weapons shipment intended to help arm all the new recruits got attacked by the Bargleg Swoop Gang on planet Drunost, a vassal of the Blood Scars, and that dragged rebel operatives into a gang war with the Hand of Judgment, a gang of ex-stormtroopers who deserted after refusing to carry out a massacre on Teardrop ordered by the ISB. Emperor Palpatine loved to pit his subordinates against one another with dire consequences for whoever was in last place, so after the loss of the Death Star, every over-sector needed to look busy fighting rebels, knowing that whoever was fighting rebels the least would incur the wrath of the Emperor. Teardrop had been home to a rebel listening post, but it was already abandoned by the time 3rd Steel Blade troops got there. 3rd Steel Blade needed something to show the Emperor they were fighting rebels, so the order came down to massacre a random town and say they were rebel sympathizers. This was at the point when Palpatine was trying to rush as many people into the Stormtrooper Corps so that he'd have as many faceless, mindlessly obedient killers as possible to carry out the Tarkin Doctrine, especially now that he'd lost the Death Star. But the Stormtrooper Corps had already been recruiting as many fanatic brutes as they could find for 10 years, so to expand their recruitment required recruiting people who weren't fanatic brutes. They might have been generally pro-imperial and sympathetic to authoritarian violence, but evidently they still had some lines they wouldn't cross. Just because they wore the armor and signed the contract didn't mean they were the same kind of stormtroopers as the original breed, the kind Palpatine was trying to get more of. More and more of them were really Imperial Army troopers wearing a stormtrooper uniform, and the Hand of Judgment was an early sign of that. On Shelkanwa, the Imperial Governor, the guy responsible for the bizarrely light-touch policies, conspired with the rebels in hopes of making Shelsha an independent sector. Some of his Imperial apparatchiks sold him out, though, and reinforcements arrived to crush the Nation Rebellion. Some stories say that Darth Vader and the 501st came in person, others that the Hand of Judgment was found by intergalactic woman of mystery Mara Jade, and they teamed up to bring the rebel governor down, and it's also possible that it was just 3rd Steel Blade's Grand Moff sending in a few Star Destroyers. I like to imagine it was Mara Jade, though, partly because I want Mara Jade to be real, but also because that would look really bad for 3rd Steel Blade. Couldn't find any rebels to fight except for one listening post that was already abandoned, ordered a massacre to look busy, then the stormtroopers kill the guy who gave the order and team up with someone outside Oversector Command to put down a major sector-wide rebellion by a sector-level official in the 3rd Steel Blade chain of command. By the time Emperor Palpatine got finished reading that report, he'd be asking himself if it's possible to execute someone twice.